Today we're going to talk about dark psychology, but not dark psychology from the angle of how do we use dark psychology to take advantage of other people. I'm actually going to talk to you about dark psychology of how do we analyze and identify people out there who don't have our best interests at heart, and how do we protect ourselves from their tactics and techniques. And honestly, I think this is such an important topic, but when I scroll on YouTube, I basically see nobody talking about this at all. I see how people talking about how to improve your Facebook ads, how to, create a wild sales funnel, how to make 10K in a month, etc., and all these things. But nobody seems to talk about how do you handle people, right? How do you identify people who aren't good for you? And seen as if you're in business, you're going to be dealing with people, either selling to them, partnering with them, or buying from them. You actually should really understand this, because understanding people is basically the foundation of what you got to do as a business owner. So today we're going to talk about something called the Dark Triad, and the Dark Triad is basically some of the most toxic and worst traits of humans. I'm going to teach you about them. I'm going to give you examples of where you'll see them. I'm going to teach you how to avoid them and how to deal with people like that. You'll have probably scrolled through social media 100 times today where you have seen people who are over-promising, doing everything possible to get you to buy their course. They are flaunting their wealth. They seem to have huge egos. They seem to be drawn to status, drawn to power, and they seem to be doing it in a way which says, I am better than you, and that is why you've got to learn from me. Or maybe you've even just dealt with a friend who says that they have your best interests at heart, but really when it comes down to it, they just never seem to be there, right? But they're always there when they need something from you. These are people who are most likely on the Dark Triad. So let's break it down. The Dark Triad is made up of 3 different traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Narcissism is where people have excessive self-importance. They crave admiration. They are entitled. They have a lack of empathy for others. So think about people who constantly brag online about their wealth or their achievements. Machiavellianism, this is really manipulative behavior. People who say one thing to your face, but do something entirely different behind your back. They'll happily exploit your trust if it benefits them. And then psychopathy. Psychopathy is marked by very low empathy, emotional detachment, and willingness to harm or exploit others without remorse. Contrary to popular belief, not all psychopaths are violent. Some wear suits, and some sit across from the table from you when you are negotiating. Some might even be one of your friends. Now, these types of personality traits you will see all over the place, but the reason it's important for entrepreneurship, because in my opinion, anecdotally, I have noticed that the Dark Triad personality traits seem to be much more prevalent in people who want to be entrepreneurs or people who are entrepreneurs. And I thought to myself, you know what, I'm actually going to see if there's any studies out there which agree with my prediction that entrepreneurs are more likely to be on the Dark Triad. And you know what I found when I searched? I found that that is the actual case. People who are entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs have a tendency to not only value freedom more, not only value, helping out the family more, it also draws the people who are more after power, control, money, and things like this. And these studies have been done all across different cultures. So why is this important? This is important because you as an entrepreneur have to learn to protect yourself, because you're actually in a shark infested waters. So I talked about the theory of, these guys, but what do they actually look like when it gets to real life? You only have to scroll on social media for a few minutes before you start spotting these personalities. Let's start with narcissism first of all. When you look at people who are lavishly showing their wealth, they are, desperately trying to show you how much control, how much power, how much status they have. These are almost always hallmark indicators of people who are high on the narcissism spectrum. It's not just they have it or they don't. It's how far on it they are. When you see people who steal others' content, I've talked about various issues like this, and fake gurus and things like this. When you see people who steal other people's content word for word, what are they doing there? They are taking the content. Not only are they doing it to get the views, but also they are doing it because they want other people to recognize that they have come up with these creative ideas as well. So that's narcissism on display. They want the status from it. So narcissism is very, very easy to spot. I'll teach you how to deal with these types of people in just a while. The next one up is Machiavellianism. These are people who thrive on manipulation. These are people who unethically persuade and market to you just to make a quick buck. They'll do things like massively overpromise, offer guarantees which aren't actual guarantees. They can also fall into the category of stealing ideas without giving credit, but it's more just so they profit from it rather than like the ego boost that they get from it as well. In partnerships, or if you're a business partner with somebody who's incredibly Machiavellian, you have to watch your back, because they might be trying to exploit you at all times. They might be saying, hey, you know what, that sounds like a really good idea, and then suddenly they've emptied your joint bank account, because I've seen that happen quite a lot. That is a Machiavellian person. And psychopathy is the final one. Remember, I'm going to teach you in a minute how to deal with all these different types of personalities, but psychopathy is a little bit rarer in entrepreneurship than narcissism and Machiavellianism, at least according to the studies. But psychopaths have this tendency to not just go and kill people, but they have a tendency to exploit opportunities. They don't have any guilt afterwards about it. They can ghost on deals, they can ghost on commitments. They don't feel, bad about any of this stuff. They are the type of people who are ruthless in business. They will just do a hostile takeover of a place and not feel bad about it at all, not feel bad about the employees they might have to let go, or any people who might come off worse from this. Narcissism and Machiavellianism, they still have empathy. They will no doubt rationalize it in their own heads why they don't need to feel bad in scenarios, but the psychopaths, they don't have the capability of feeling bad in scenarios. Okay, so how do you deal with each of these type of people? The keys are very, very simple, based on just knowing who they are. So let's think about the narcissists. What do they want? They want everyone to view them as grand. They want everyone to view them as high status, lots of money, in control, power. Everything has to be about them. Why does everything have to be about them? Because they are so inherently self-interested. So how do you communicate with them and stop them taking advantage of you? If you are dealing with somebody who you think is either you're trying to sell to somebody, I don't know why you would, but if you're trying to sell to somebody who is narcissistic on the spectrum, and you've identified that, or you're trying to work with somebody and make sure it all goes smoothly, you have to frame every single proposition around their own self-interest. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's what you have to do in sales anyway, but you have to do it to the nth degree in this. So rather than saying something like, oh, this idea here, would be a great deal for both of us, instead you would say, this deal right here, this would boost your reputation. This would, make you seem more credible. This would earn you more money, and people will look to you like, you're the king here, and it will do all these great things for you. You have to speak in a language which is just purely putting them on the spotlight, not you. Okay, so that is how you deal with narcissists right there. And when you're trying to escape, maybe the grip, maybe you've already found out that you're partnered with someone, or maybe one of your clients is one of them, or one of the people that you're potentially learning from is actually a narcissist as well. You should do your absolute best to put zero blame on them whatsoever, because they won't take the feedback anyway. Instead, you put all the blame on yourself and you make them feel good about themselves, and then you back away and you never speak to them again. Okay, so that's narcissism. Machiavellian people, remember, are naturally manipulative. They're naturally exploitative. If they for 1 second think that you are potentially getting the better end of the deal there, they will attempt to straight away exploit you. Often they're very paranoid about other people exploiting them. So if you think you're dealing with a Machiavellian type person, whether it's in a partnership, whether it's in a friendship, whether it's you're selling to someone or you're buying from someone like that, if you have identified that this person is actually a little bit manipulative, they seem to be exploiting other people around us, or doing anything to make a bit of money, and over-promising and things like that. You should always position scenarios win-win in a way which it shows that they are getting a slightly better end of the deal. And you have to be fully transparent about that. You have to document everything, and you have to constantly realign that they are getting a better end of the deal than you on everything. You have to make it feel like they have won, because if they get for a second that they aren't winning or they interpret your actions as being exploitative, they will immediately start saying one thing to your face and doing something behind your back. That's just how they work. As an example of Machiavellianism here, I went through this stage, this was years ago now, in my business where I was basically trying to book as many sales calls as possible. I was like, you know what, I'm going to try my best, because this is what everyone says to do, is to give myself and the person I'm speaking to so much value, right? I'm going to just let them have everything, right? Because the idea is if you let them have everything, they will end up ultimately thinking this is a really good person, and they will end up becoming your client, or they end up paying you, or it will just come back to you in some sort of way, right? Wrong, not always the truth anyway. So I remember I was speaking to this guy who was a CEO of an insurance company. This must have been in 2019, perhaps 2020. Speaking to this guy, CEO of an insurance company, and he needed help with like automation on LinkedIn, and it was still while I was within, you know, that industry. And he needed like specific things doing to help with spreadsheets and to manage his contacts, right? And then as well, he also needed some sort of system in the background. I spoke to this guy quite a bit, and I started to feel red flags coming from this guy. He was saying things like, you know, oh, I can't wait to work with you and things like this. And he was trying to manipulate, but I had to commit to this thing that I was already doing. The thing that I was already doing was trying to give people as much value, and I just wanted to see where it went, right? So I ended up helping out this guy a bunch of times, and I said to him, hey, you know what, I'm going to help you out here, you're going to pay for this service, and then we're going to continue to work together in the future. So it was kind of a little bit backwards. I was just leading with value, and he was just like saying all these things, and I was spotting them, but like I just wanted to see where it went. And he was saying things like, I can't wait to work with you. Oh my God, this is, you know, you are totally undercharging for what you are, you know, what you are selling and things like this. I've never met such a genuine person, blah, 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 blah. And guess what? When it came time to him to pay, he disappeared into the abyss. He blocked me on LinkedIn. This is the CEO of an insurance company, right? So this guy had money. He didn't need to do that for the prices that I was charging. He really didn't need, and it was like a small insurance company, only with like a 20 or so people in it. So it wasn't like a, you know, he was like a multi-billionaire or anything like this. He was at the stage where he still was looking for outside help, and like he was handling it himself. But it was just so frigging crazy. And I thought to myself, like, this guy, we're absolutely a multi-millionaire. And I was like, he did not need to do that. And he did it anyway, right? All to save like a quick buck. And that's exploitative behavior. What can you do, eh? The final one, psychopaths. These are luckily the rarest, but also the hardest to spot as well. So if you ever watched the film American Psycho, Christian Bale? Yeah, and he plays Patrick Bateman. And in that film, he plays this psychopath who has like no empathy for anything. He is just cold, really ruthless. He's very, very charismatic as well, because he is mimicking other humans. He looks at what should be socially acceptable behavior and he mimics it. That's what psychopaths do, because they don't experience the usual range of emotions like empathy and things like this. So psychopaths are actually, because of this, very hard to spot, because they're very well trained on, I'm going to laugh when you laugh, right? Because that is funny. I'm going to look sad when there's a sad moment happening, but they're doing it on learned behavior rather than like actually feeling those emotions. So really the best way to spot these people is to look for the difference between what their words say and what their actions are. And this is really a good way to pick any of them out. But, you know, a psychopathic business partner, for instance, they might promise you the world, but constantly fail to deliver. And when you go and ask them for things, they have no remorse in anything that they are saying. You can tell that they're putting on remorse. So really you have to protect yourself by limiting your vulnerability and avoid over-investing trust in them. So learning to read people, understand them and respond appropriately to people and handle people with these types of traits is absolutely critical. A person who has toxic traits, who has dark triad traits like this. I don't know why there's not more videos on this from a business context, honestly, because it's so prevalent in business. People who are like this will drain your time, they will drain your money, they will make everything about them, and they will exploit themselves, whether it's a client, whether it's a business partner. I've seen it time and time again. And also working in the field that I work in as well, I've studied a lot of psychology, and so I can kind of see all this stuff now. On the other hand, when you spot people like this, you can then spot the genuinely good people who don't show up at any of these red flags. And really, these are the people that you should be surrounding yourself with, because ultimately they're the people who are going to accelerate your growth and, you know, also multiply your success going into the future. If you get rid of these people who are exploitative, you know, whether they are narcissistic, Machiavellian, or, you know, demonstrating bits of psychopathy, if you can get rid of these types of people, you're doing great. Or even if you can't get rid of them, but you identify how to handle them as well. So if you enjoyed this, it's a slightly different video today, but I saw like a gap and I was like, this is such an important topic and it costs people so much money that it needs to really be talked about. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Different video from me today. Let me know if you like videos like this. I can record others. There's a lot of things which I've come to realize over my time, and also because I've studied psychology so much as well. Okay guys, so take it easy. See you in the next one.